All right, welcome everyone, and thank you for attending today's Tech Titan webinar, Wednesday with Intermedia. My name is Kim Withrow, and I'm the manager of the sales engineering team here at Intermedia. Today, we're going to be covering how to use the Auto Attendant to optimize your call flow to better manage the higher than usual call volume that many companies are experiencing in this new work from home environment that we find ourselves in. But before we get started, I just want to do a little technical check-in and make sure everybody could hear me. So please give me a thumbs up or a smiley emoji using the emoji button at the top center of your screen. All right, excellent. Looks like we're good there. Thanks everyone for doing that. Appreciate it. So Intermedia's Webinar Wednesday is a very popular series of webinars that takes place every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. It's broken up into two separate tracks. The first is the Business Builder track, which is designed to help you as a partner grow your business and ultimately your success with Intermedia. And then the second track is called the Tech Titan track, which today's webinar is a part of. And these are designed to give you a live demo and deep technical dives into features that can bring real value to you and your customers. Now, we would like to hear from you. So with that, I've created an email address, techtitan@intermedia.net. Please go ahead and jot that down. And I'd like to ask you to send over topics that are of interest to you. I want to make sure that the content that we are providing has some real value and that you're interested in the message that we're giving out. We'll do our best to cover as many of the suggested topics as possible in the future. Now, we're going to be taking about 30 minutes of your time today, with about 15 to 20 minutes for the actual presentation, and then about 10 to 15 minutes at the end for the Q&A section. If you have a question, I'd like to encourage you to use the built-in question functionality as opposed to putting the question in the chat. Now, you do that by clicking on that blue question mark square at the top center of your screen. That's going to open up a little dialog box that will send the question over to me, and then we'll go through as many of those as we can at the end of our time. And I also want to just briefly mention our Unite certification process, or Elevate for you guys. If you are not currently Elevate certified, then you can do so super easy. It only takes a couple of hours, and it gives you everything that you need to start selling Elevate right away. So if you're interested in that, you're going to log into your partner portal and then click on the Intermedia University. It's pretty simple. There's an orange Get Certified button from there, and it walks you through the certification process. And then last but not least, once you're certified, definitely want to make sure everybody is aware of our NFR program. So NFR stands for Not for Resale. This is a program that allows you to actually sign up for Intermedia services for your own company, for yourself, at a steep discount and even sometimes free. We believe that the best way for you to understand and evangelize and sell a product is for you to actually use the product yourself. So I'm actually going to do something new today and take a moment here just to do a quick poll and ask folks if you're interested in having an Intermedia rep reach out to you to talk about getting an NFR account set up for you. Please go ahead and respond to the poll here. Now, if you want contact, just answer yes. And if you are not interested in contact, then you can either say no or just not answer at all. Either way, we won't contact you. All right, I'm just going to leave this up for another couple of minutes and make sure everybody who wants to answer yes has an opportunity to do so. All right, great. I'm going to go ahead and close. Thank you for that. So now I'd like to turn things over to our presenter for today's webinar, Aaron Roberts. Aaron is one of the sales engineers here at Intermedia, and he's been with us for a little over 3 years. If you've attended any of our other webinars, you've probably heard Aaron speak. He's quite knowledgeable on our Elevate product. Prior to being at Intermedia, he worked for over 20 years in the voice and networking field. So he's really been around the block, and he was critical to the development of the Unite product. He worked with our developers very closely, and he also continues to work with partners on a daily basis to support their selling from a technical perspective. So Aaron?
Yeah. Always so flattering and she is my manager, so be envious of having such a nice manager that thinks so highly, publicly at least, of you, and presumably in reality. Thanks again, Kim, and thanks again, everybody whom is a second attendee or multiple attendee to these Tech Titan webinars. These are some topics that potentially, if you've done demonstrations with us, with your customers that include me or any of my peers in this sales engineering team, then you may see some overlap to the information and content we're going to provide today. Though we really want to introduce this information and talk about it in at least as detailed a level as we can, and then offer up an opportunity for questions, which is a little bit more extensive than just putting together a video that we can then share with you all. So today we're going to talk about the automated attendant, and I know that this is table stakes for most phone systems in the last 30 years, I suspect, even maybe 20 years it would be a standard feature. This is an automated answering component feature to a phone system that then oftentimes offers options to the inbound callers to do some behavior. It would be Most folks know what an auto attendant is, but just for the chance that there's someone on the call that doesn't, it's going to be that, press 1 for sales, press 2 for customer care, press 0 for reception or an operator. That sort of programming and that sort of offering by a phone system is essentially what the auto attendant is, or at least that's the message front ending an auto attendant's specific menu. In any case, our auto attendant, we think, is robust, and since it's cloud-based, has an advantage in these times where we don't have a centralized office environment that we commonly had before, whereas so many folks in those office environments are like us at Intermedia working from home. Then this auto attendant really comes into its value in that it's cloud-based and doesn't rely in any way on that physical office or its power or its internet or the availability of an IT organization on site at that physical office if something were to go wrong. That being the cloud's advantage in so many ways in so many different applications, but especially so when thinking about call routing for a company when we don't have all of our resources centralized like we have traditionally. Most of you are likely familiar with the host pilot interface. This is the Intermedia interface for application management of any of the tools, many of the tools on our system, from the hosted exchange to any meeting licenses, as well as SecureSync, and of course the Unite phone system. If you're a private label reseller partner, of course, then this is the Elevate phone system instead of Unite, and there's some other names that take away the Intermedia branding. So sometimes folks will ask questions with regard to Elevate versus Unite. It's only just the private label version. When we launch into the Cloud PBX application management, though, from Host Pilot, we can then navigate to the Auto Attendant submenu, and in that submenu, we'll be presented with all of the auto attendants that we currently have on the system. In our webinar today, I'm going to just create one from scratch and go through it step by step. So first and foremost, we can create a new auto attendant by clicking Create Auto Attendant. So ideally, an intuitive step. We'll call this the Tech Titan Test Auto Attendant for ease of memory. We'll say 152 is be the extension for this auto attendant. Then we can pick a primary phone number for the auto attendant. It can be toll free, of course, or it can be a local phone number. We'll choose a local number in this case. We could pick the time zone where this auto attendant generally will be as well. If we've created location objects, then we could choose from a list of the objects that we've created for geographic locations. If we haven't, then we'll be able to choose the main company address. In any case, once we create the auto attendant, it will come up and notify you if there's an additional charge or any charge associated. The initial auto attendant is included with every account on the system or on the with Unite has a singular auto attendant. Additional auto attendants are list price $4.99 per month per auto attendant. So we'd be notified of that charge. And then we should have an auto attendant created with an assigned phone number that then we can go into and look at the detailed configuration and other settings that we have available to us momentarily. First, when you create the auto attendant, you'll be dropped into the business hours tab or the schedulable menus tab. And we have two different tabs in the settings button on the on the top of the auto attendant configuration. The two different types of menus that we can offer are schedule based and date based. And that's going to be the real differentiator between this business hours tab and the events tab. We'll come back to that momentarily. In the settings tab, however, or the settings button, what we can do here is also assign different phone numbers at this point. So we can assign maybe another number or a toll-free number. If we choose a toll-free number, we'll have to pick some toll plan to go along with that. We can assign other local numbers to act as market expansion lines for this auto attendant. And we can have as many numbers associated to the auto attendant as we need or desire. We can also manipulate the extension, the plain language name we've given the auto attendant, its time zone, and the geographic location that we've had added to the auto attendant when we first created it. Also, while a user chooses an option to be transferred to some entity, there's some time where they potentially are going to be in a transfer moment. We can determine here what's played back to them. It could be a ring back tone, like a standard ringing sound, or we can have a music on hold or whatever custom media file we want played to them during that transfer can be manipulated from the general tab within the settings of the individual auto attendant. Anyone familiar with our system probably knows that the objects on the system, most if not all of them, have a voicemail associated to them. So the TechTitan test auto attendant that we just created is in and of itself an object that has a voicemail. So we have an online inbox for those voicemails that administrators can access here. Also, it'll have its own settings, and these settings are really going to revolve around notification and retrieval of the voicemails for the auto attendant that you're configuring the voicemail for. This is the same, in fact, voicemail configuration for all objects on the system, and it revolves around the greeting, the PIN number, if we want to have an operator button set so they can escape out of voicemail, if we want to transcribe the voicemails, and then ultimately we can send an email notification with transcription in the included file, as well as text message notification. Users, of course, on the system have visual voicemail boxes on their desktop and mobile applications as well. They would likely be the recipient of the email notification if they chose to have that method too. However, these cloud-based objects don't have physical phones, and they don't have desktop applications, and they also don't have mobile applications. So those voicemails can be checked online, again, by administrators here, or we can have those notifications set. So really not much more than adding phone numbers and changing some basic settings in the settings tab. Now we're going to consider how we want menus played to our inbound callers. The auto attendant has a schedule as well as a date-based menu option, as I mentioned before. When we look at the schedule-based, the most standard approach is going to be a working hours, any not working hours. So most folks can recognize that that's a pretty straightforward and common desire with regard to how calls are handled inbound through an automated attendant. So we can then click in on any of the menus that we have here. We'll choose working hours at this point. And by clicking in on its hyperlink name, we can do initially plain language name management. We can manipulate the actual schedule to be custom or whatever method we want that particular menu, in this case, the business hours menu, to be played. We'll leave it at here 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on weekdays for our example. We have the ability to enable and disable this specific menu. This isn't for the whole auto attendant. This is specifically the working hours menu that we'd be enabling or disabling. And then we have the menu options here, and then everything below the menu options would be the actual configuration and customization for the particular menu that we're looking at. And again, this example, we're looking at the working hours menu. The menu options for all menus, including submenus and date-based menus, etc., are going to have the same configuration customization options within them. So when we look at this and other menus moving forward, we'll see that it's the exact same options throughout, which is helpful because it's very intuitive and easy to visualize, I think. First and foremost, the individual menu has the ability to enable or disable the dial by extension capability. This is the traditional, if you know your party's extension, dial it at any time option. It's as simple as clicking the hyperlink and it's disabled, and clicking it again and it's enabled. So again, ideally very intuitive. The greeting, of course, is going to change most commonly when you update any of the options that we've programmed into the auto attendance feature set to offer to callers. We got to give them some greeting to let them know what those options are. We can click here on this hyperlink to then bring up a greeting manipulation window. Here you'll see that we can upload a greeting in the OGG or WAVE format. And this is probably the most common method of manipulating the auto attendant greeting. However, we have the ability to also record a greeting sort of on the fly by creating an extension and pin specific to this unique menu, and then ultimately recording the greeting for the menu as if you were maybe recording a personal voicemail. Press 1 to review, press 2 to re-record, those sorts of logical approaches. So we have two different methods of getting the updated greeting for the specific menu that we're offering. Then we have 0 through 9, star and pound. Those are, of course, all the button pads options on a dial pad, and a timeout setting here at the bottom. It's as easy as choosing the particular button that you want to program to do some behavior. Let's choose maybe program 0 for reception. So I'll choose 0, and then my two options are to route calls to or create a submenu. For now, we'll just choose the route calls to, and here you can then see all of our different options for call routing, for programming specific button options to a menu within an auto attendant. A user's voicemail, external voicemail, auto attendant, maybe another geographic location. My Seattle office versus my Tacoma office has its own auto attendant maybe. So I could say for the Tacoma office, press 0 in this example. An auto attendant voicemail box, we can send it directly to that. A submenu, a hunt group, maybe I send it to customer care or tech support or sales. A contact center express group. If you're not familiar with that, it's really our hunt groups really beefed up to include a manager aspect that allows for monitor, whisper, and barge. I think I've done a Tech Titan on that topic. If not, we will. A voicemail box for the overall company, a specific resource voicemail box, maybe a conference room for some reason you might do that. A virtual extension, a dial by name directory, pulling from both the first and last name of the display name for the users. We have a repeat greeting option we can offer, and then hang up is commonly reserved for the timeout setting, but could be put on 0 to be a little bit aggressive with your callers who just push 0 for reception. You can hang up, but in any case, these are the options we have available to us. After that, we can consider what a submenu is used for and potentially some different uses for a submenu. So maybe we're going to program button 2 now to be directions to our different stores. So with that in mind, I might create a submenu and I'll call it directions. I could save the changes, and now I have a whole nother menu here on my button 2 that's going to be called directions, that when I expand, you'll see, as I noted earlier, the exact same options that we had for our current menu, our primary or top menu. We can enable, disable our dial by extension. Of course, it's going to have its unique greeting because it's going to, in this example, play directions, potentially. I'll use more examples, and then we can do 1 through 0 through 9, star and pound again. And in our timeout, we can go back to our previous menu and go up to the top menu. So we have different timeout options we can offer as well. In any case, if we want to say then for a specific store, so maybe the Seattle branch, I'll have a menu here called Seattle with 3 T's this time. And then I'll have a store here, another submenu called Tacoma. And here then I can come into these submenus and record a specific greeting for directions on how to get to Seattle. And I could come into my Tacoma menu and record a specific greeting on how to get to Tacoma. And then I can update my directions greeting to say, press 1 for Seattle directions and press 2 for Tacoma directions. that's one example of how a submenu can work. Submenus can also do things like press 2 for an update on our snow days at a school, as an example, and then 2 would have a unique greeting that talked about the snow days, and that would be a bulletin essentially coming in and being placed on button 2 as an option to the inbound caller. There, of course, are other options with submenus for a list of, for sales, press 2, and then the submenu presents for for contract sales, press 1, for commercial, or rather for commercial sales, press 1, for consumer sales, press 2. And then you'd have all these different options for menus down available to you or to the customer administrator to set and route calls throughout the network or through the phone system. And this is, of course, available all the time. It doesn't rely on the physical phones being available. There's no cap to the amount of inbound calls that can come into this auto attendant. It will be able to juggle way more than your users. If you have 10 users and they receive 20 calls to the auto attendant will be able to, at the very least, take those calls. And now, if they were to be routed to users, they might be overflowed on call volume individually, but the auto attendant would be able to handle that volume and gives that feeling that they won't be missing calls because the auto attendant will always be available for them. That's important in these specific times. Going back to the schedule-based menu section, that was just one menu. That was the working hours menu and how we can manipulate that. We have a visual representation, both in a 12 and 24-hour view option, that then we can see with the color of the specific menu when it's going to be played based on a Sunday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Schedule. So we can see, at least on the 12 hours. So we could see here that the green menu, working hours, is going to be between Monday and Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. After hours is 24/7. So anytime other than that time we just saw will be after hours. If we wanted to create a lunch menu that allowed for a, well, we got to set a schedule up here. Just do weekdays from 11 to noon. We're going to have a unique menu play on weekdays from 11 to noon. This way, when the receptionist, let's say, potentially isn't available or whatever the case may be, we have a different menu that we can make available. We could program the menu just like we would any other menu to do whatever behavior we prefer. But when we come back to the schedule-based menu section in the tab, we could see then that we have this lunch menu, but see it's blue, and it doesn't show up blue anywhere over here. And that's because 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on weekdays overlaps 11 a.m. to noon on weekdays, and it's visually, physically in the interface above lunch. If I drag lunch above working hours with a drag and drop feature, and now we'll see that lunch is the primary green menu. Of course, it overlaps working hours, but because it has a higher priority now in the list, it's going to then play from 11 a.m. to noon. And this is true of any menu you create. We just made a lunch one up, but you could have it be anything you want. And so you can see how it's easy to manipulate the menus and to play different menus specific on what they want to be played. If I made another 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. weekdays, say working hours version 2 for some special weekly occasion once or twice a year, then I would just drag that particular menu above my other menu, and it would be the priority menu at that point and play its content to the inbound callers. The big thing that we didn't have in our previous platform that we're really excited to have now in our Unite and Elevate platform is the date-based menus that we can offer now. These can be calendar dates, and these are obviously going to be most commonly holidays. We have a lot of preset holidays for Puerto Rico, Canada, and the United States. Here you can see things like New Year's Day, 4th of July, etc. to create some canned menus. And these are just going to be preset dates. So you, of course, can create custom ones that are those dates and not use these presets. And then ultimately, once you create a specific day, you can pre-fill it maybe with a specific menu. Maybe we'll just use the working hours menu. And then we can add the holiday. And now ultimately, we have a day on the 4th of July in this example, Independence Day in the United States, that we can manipulate its contents. Presumably it's greeting to say happy 4th of July, and then whatever options we're going to play on this unique specific date. So this option is something that people were really hoping for and we got. We can, of course, do the standard holidays, but we also have the ability to do just any event that we want that's date-based. And I often use in my demonstrations the idea of a company picnic where we're going to maybe have a unique event that no one will be available and we want to play a menu message specific to that day. That's really the guts of the menu creation and management and the different submenu options, as well as the setting options. I want to talk about one more component to the auto attendants, or at least maybe two more components to the auto attendant that are worth mentioning. We'll go back down to our Tech Titans auto attendant here in the main list of different auto attendants. And here we can see the plain language name we've given it, as well as the phone number that's assigned to it, at least the phone number or numbers, starting with the priority or the primary phone number. Its assigned extension that we've given it, and then a component that we hadn't talked about yet, but it's the reception groups. Reception groups allow for us to create ring groups based on schedules that then will ring specific users, presumably reception roles, or any user in the case of everybody's phones ringing whenever the main line's called sort of logic. And in fact, augment the caller ID of that inbound call to represent that this inbound call is coming in as a call to the auto attendant and not necessarily a call to that individual user. So me, Aaron, let's say as the receptionist, would see a caller ID that said in this example, the displayed content here in the display box says Tech Titan Test Auto Attendant. That would augment my caller ID to show that before then it showed the actual caller ID of the inbound caller. So I could answer it as the actual company versus me, Aaron, as a user. We have the ability to determine how long we'll ring the members of the reception group before we send them to the automated attendance automated service. And we have a scheduled option that we could set to do that. So we'll keep it as these default settings for now. And then essentially we have the ability here to add a user from the system or some phone number as one of those receptionist roles. So let's say I'll choose Aaliyah and Bob are our receptionists. I then can create the reception group. And at this point, between whatever hours I think it's default set to is 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., then this reception group, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., is enabled here and will ring those two users for 30 seconds and allowing them to give that human touch. So this is often a request for folks that don't want full automation on the first touch when their number is called. They want to have a reception if they can, but they don't want to miss the call. So they back it up, this reception group, with then the ability to have an automated offering to them as well. Lastly, with regard to these, and I know we're getting a little bit edgy on time, the call recordings for the groups are included in reception groups as well. So we can record all inbound calls to our main line if we push it through a reception group, because that would be something to record. Obviously, there'd be some communication between the receptionist and the inbound caller versus an automated attendant, which generally speaking is a one-way experience as far as input. In any case, we can record all inbound calls to our reception groups, and those are stored up to 100 hours online. As well, you can have an email sent with the attachment of the recording for archiving reasons. And with that, Kim, I think that's what I had to offer, maybe a little bit longer than 20 minutes.
Great. Yeah, well, it was all good information. Thank you for that. All right, let's go ahead and just get right into our Q&A section then. So if you could just stop your screen share, Aaron, I can go ahead and start that.
Perfect.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, I like the applause. Thank you. Okay, so from Nikki Jacobson, my engineer has been attending meetings on Tuesdays. Is this the same? If not, please send me an invite for Tuesday. So Nikki, I saw this question and I saw also your other question. I'm gonna reach out to you directly on this. I'm not aware of any webinar that happens on Tuesday, but Intermedia is a big company and there's other webinars that happen that I'm not, not part of. So let me do a little bit of research on that and I'll get back to you on this and also your other question that you sent in. And so from Ann, it says, so all that is being discussed is under just one AA, one auto attendant.
That's correct. So in this example that we did today, we were looking at the Tech Titan test auto attendant that I had just created at the very beginning of the webinar and manipulating the menus within that specific auto attendant and thus its phone numbers and extensions associated to it. So here in this example, the Tech Titan auto attendant has this phone number, this extension. Everything we just showed, including the reception group, is within that ecosystem of that particular auto attendant. And that's common when you have multiple different locations to have likely multiple different auto attendants to attend to those different locations. But to be fair, when you have no geography, when we're not bound to geography because your auto attendant is cloud-based, you can think of routing in that sort of geographic model, but you can also consider routing and selling the idea of routing to maybe where you have a centralized reception for all of your locations, and then they, in that central reception, handle the majority of the human interaction with inbound callers. And then maybe there's somebody at each of the general locations that has some reception role or side role, but generally speaking, they're going to be used more for some other capacity and have reception be centralized because it's all just an extension dial in the global multi-location approach.
Well,
Cool.
I
Next
love that
question.
Elevate gives you the, yeah, I
Oh,
love that
uh,
Elevate gives you the flexibility to set up, multiple or the same or one auto attendant. I love that granularity. So can we do date ranges in the auto attendant calendar yet? Examples would be business shutdown at holidays.
yeah, I think we saw that there in the date base, but as far as a range of dates, today that's not an offer where we can create an event. The event's going to be a specific date, not a range of days. Today,
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't really
Mm-hmm.
considered this. I hadn't really considered this before, and this is a really good question. So, David, I appreciate that. Um, when you want to do like a 3-day menu instead of just a specific 1-day menu. Uh,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we'll capture that feedback and get that over to our development team. And then can you set up reception priorities among users?
Not in the reception groups. So in unlike a hunt group and a contact center express group where you can have a sequential order, which effectively gives you a priority. And I'm assuming that's what this means, Herb, where I could say most of the time Aaron gets the calls, but if he doesn't take the call, then Kim's going to get the call. If that's what this
Mm-hmm.
means, then today I don't have any way of prioritizing one over the other. Both will ring in that reception group. If that isn't what you're asking, I can maybe interpret this. Oops, let me see. I sent in an email. Oh, he's clarifying in chat here. I sent it. Oh, okay. Good
Oh, okay.
feedback. Good feedback
No
to the
response. Great.
presenters.
Okay.
Um,
Hmm.
the So no is the simple answer. There's no way to do it today within the reception group to give one priority over the other. So if there's two receptionists in a reception group, they'll ring simultaneously as our only option. It's more of a traditional ring group than it is an ACD where we do have manipulation over round robin, sequential, longest idle agent, that sort of stuff. Uh,
All right, great. I know
And
we
David,
are
I see
running a
this
little over.
present. Oh, I'm sorry, the presenter chat I see from you, David. I appreciate that. We could reach out to you individually and maybe try to get a response, but that is the response in any case. I'm sorry that you had that experience.
We've just got one more question. When would a second AA be needed?
Multiple geographic locations is the most common scenario. You wouldn't necessarily need it. It's when people have their heads wrapped around that geography concept, when you're bound not by geography, that it becomes, if you will, a need by them. So they can say, this is the phone number that goes to this location. Even if it's in the cloud, I still want it to feel like that, and that's how I want it to be set up. So then you could have a separate auto attendant. But naturally, we could assign all of the main numbers from a 10 location company to one auto attendant. And then that one auto attendant can handle calls for all 10 locations. They just, whichever number was dialed would ring that auto attendant because of the number relation. And if you could find a way to sort of sell it in that manner, then all of a sudden you're not spending $4.99 per month for additional auto attendants that you could wrap into the individual one that's included with the system. So great questions. I really appreciate everyone taking the providing some input back. I really wish I had a couple more minutes because we have resources I wanted to share with you, but YouTube and our knowledge base have great resources on the auto attendant that you can also view there.